Before you go to sleep tonight, don't close your eyes yet. There's something you need to do first. Not something long, not something complicated, but something that can completely change how your night goes and how you wake up tomorrow. Because what happens while you sleep is not as passive as most people think. I know that sounds strange, but from the side I came from, nights were never ignored. They were understood as one of the most vulnerable times, not because something dramatic always happens, but because when you sleep, your guard is down, your body rests, your awareness fades, and whatever you carried into that moment stays with you. I wasn't always on this side, warning people about this. There was a time when I was deeply involved in the occult, trained to understand patterns, timing, and how influence works when people are most unaware. And one thing was very clear: if they go to sleep unguarded, they carry everything into the night: stress, fear, confusion, unfinished thoughts. And those things don't just disappear when you sleep, they settle, they repeat, they affect how you rest and how you wake up. I remember this clearly. No one needed to attack someone directly at night. Most of the time, people carried their own weight into it. And because nothing was done before sleep, that weight stayed with them. That's why some people wake up tired, even after resting. Why some people feel heavy without knowing why. Why some nights feel restless, even when everything seemed fine. Now listen carefully. The problem is not just what happens during the night. The problem is what you allow before it begins. Because just like your morning sets your day, your night sets your next day. And there is something simple, one psalm, that, when read before sleep, changes what you carry into that night. Not as a ritual, but as a way to clear, settle, and reset your state before you rest. In the next chapter, I'm going to show you why the moments before sleep matter more than you think, and how most people unknowingly carry the wrong things into their night. Now, this is the part most people never think about. They focus on how long they sleep, but they never pay attention to what they carry into their sleep. And from what I saw, that's what makes the difference. Because sleep is not just rest, it's continuation. Whatever is active in your mind before you sleep doesn't just disappear, it settles, it repeats, it stays with you. I remember this very clearly. People didn't need anything external to disturb their night. Most of the time, their own thoughts did it for them. They would go to bed thinking about problems, replaying conversations, holding on to stress, fear, or pressure from the day, and then they expected to wake up refreshed. But it doesn't work like that, because your mind doesn't just shut off, it carries forward. Now, listen carefully. If you go to sleep with confusion, you wake up unclear. If you go to sleep with pressure, you wake up heavy. If you go to sleep distracted, you wake up unfocused. Not always in an obvious way, but enough to affect how your next day begins. That's the pattern, and most people are caught in it without realizing it. I saw this again and again. People would end their day without closing anything. No reset, no clarity, no control. They would just lie down, scroll through their phone, think about everything, and then fall asleep in the middle of all that noise. And because nothing was settled, everything stayed active. Now here's the truth you need to understand. The moments before sleep are not casual. They are critical because they determine what continues into your night. And if nothing is done in that moment, then whatever is already there takes over. That's why some nights feel restless. That's why some mornings feel heavy. Because the transition into sleep was never controlled. Now listen carefully. You don't need something complicated to fix this. You don't need a long routine. You just need to clear your position before you sleep, to settle your mind, to close the day properly. And that's where the psalm comes in, because it's not just about reading words, it's about shifting what you carry into your night, replacing noise with clarity, replacing pressure with stillness, replacing scattered thoughts with something steady. And in the next chapter, I'm going to show you exactly which psalm to read and why this one specifically changes what follows after you close your eyes. Now, this is the moment that changes everything, not during the night, but right before it begins, because what you place in your mind before you sleep becomes what carries through your rest. So here is the psalm you need to read tonight. Psalm 4:8. I will lie down and sleep in peace. For you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. Simple, short, but powerful when you understand what it does. Now listen carefully. This is not about reading it quickly and moving on. This is about replacing everything you've been carrying all day with one clear position: peace, safety, rest. Because most people go to sleep holding on to everything: thoughts, stress, unfinished moments. But when you read this, you are choosing to release all of that. You are deciding that your night will not be filled with noise, but with stillness. I remember clearly this kind of shift was difficult to work against, not because it was loud, not because it was dramatic, but because it was intentional. It closed the day, it settled the mind, it removed everything that would normally carry over. That's the key. Now, here's how you do it properly. Before you sleep, you pause. You stop everything else. No phone, no distractions, just a moment of stillness. Then you read it slowly. I will lie down and sleep in peace. For you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. And as you say it, you don't rush. You let it settle. You let your mind align with it. Because you're not just reading words, you're setting your state. Now imagine this. Instead of going to sleep with scattered thoughts, you go to sleep with one clear position: peace, safety, stillness. So when you close your eyes, there's nothing pulling you in different directions, nothing unsettled, nothing unresolved, because you chose what you carry into that moment. Now listen carefully. This is not about how long it takes. Even a few seconds, done with intention, changes everything. Because you didn't leave your night open, you set it. And in the next chapter, I'm going to show you what happens when you skip this step and why most people unknowingly carry the wrong things into their sleep every single night. Now, this is the part most people live in without realizing it, because skipping this step doesn't feel like a mistake, it feels normal. You finish your day, you feel tired, you lie down, and you fall asleep however you can. No pause, no reset, no clear ending. And because nothing was set, everything continues. I remember this clearly. No one needed to do anything extra at night. Most people carried enough into their sleep on their own. They would lie down with thoughts still running, replaying conversations, thinking about tomorrow, holding on to stress from the day. And then they would fall asleep in the middle of that, not in peace, but in noise. And that noise doesn't disappear, it carries through the night. Now listen carefully. Sleep doesn't erase what's in your mind, it settles it deeper. So if you go to sleep unsettled, you don't wake up clear. You wake up heavy, maybe not in a way you can explain, but enough to feel it. That slight pressure, that lack of focus, that feeling like something is off. That's not random. That's what was carried over. I saw this again and again. People would wake up already behind, already trying to fix how they feel, already trying to regain focus, not because something happened in the morning, but because nothing was settled the night before. That's the pattern. Now, here's what makes it worse. Most people don't even notice it. They think it's just how life is. They think feeling tired, distracted, or unclear is normal. But it's not normal. It's repeated. Repeated because the night was never closed properly. Now listen carefully. This is not about having a perfect night. It's about not carrying unnecessary weight into it. Because when you skip that moment before sleep, you are leaving your mind open, open to continue everything from the day, open to replay everything that never got settled. And once that starts, it builds night after night until it becomes your default. Now imagine the opposite. You don't go to sleep in noise. You go to sleep in peace. You don't carry everything with you. You leave it behind because you took a few seconds to set your position. That's the difference. And in the next chapter, I'm going to show you how to make this a habit. So every night, without fail, you close your day the right way and carry the right state into your sleep. Chapter 5. Chapter 5. Making it a nightly habit. Closing your day the right way. Now this is where everything becomes consistent. Because doing this once might help, but doing it every night changes your entire pattern. When I was in the occult, we never relied on one-time actions. We relied on repetition because repetition creates stability and stability removes chaos. That's what you're building here. Not just a one-time reset, but a nightly pattern. So how do you make this automatic? You attach it to the moment you're about to sleep, not to a time, not to a feeling, but to the exact moment your day ends. You lie down, and before you close your eyes, you pause every single night, no exceptions. Because if you leave it optional, you will skip it when you need it the most. Now listen carefully. Keep it simple. Don't turn this into a long routine. Don't add multiple steps. The power is in the consistency, not the complexity. One moment, one psalm, one clear position. That's it. You stop everything else. You put your phone away. You create a few seconds of stillness, and then you read, I will lie down and sleep in peace. For you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. Slowly, clearly, with intention, not rushing through it, but settling into it because you're not just reading, you're closing your day. Now, here's something very important. At first, you may forget. You may lie down and fall asleep without doing it. That's normal. But the moment you remember, you correct it the next night. You don't stop. You don't say, I'll try later. You return to the pattern because what you repeat becomes your default. I remember clearly, this is how strong patterns were built, not through effort, but through consistency tied to a specific moment. And once that pattern was locked in, it didn't need to be forced anymore. It just happened. That's what you're creating. A night where you never go to sleep without setting your state first. Now imagine this. Every single night, before sleep, your mind becomes clear, your thoughts settle, your focus narrows into one position: peace, safety, stillness. So when you sleep, there is nothing pulling you in different directions, nothing unresolved, nothing unsettled, because you already handled it. Now listen carefully. This is not about perfection, it's about consistency. If you miss a night, you don't stop. You return the next night because what matters is the pattern over time. And the longer you stay consistent, the stronger that pattern becomes until eventually there is no version of your night where you don't close it properly. And in the next chapter, I'm going to show you what happens when you reach that level, when every night you sleep becomes truly restful And every morning you wake up clear and steady. Now, this is where everything starts to show up in a way you can actually feel, not just at night, but the next morning, because when you consistently close your day the right way, your nights begin to change. And when your nights change, your mornings follow. When I was in the occult, there was a clear pattern we noticed. People who carried everything into their sleep always woke up with something still on them, not always obvious, but enough to affect their clarity, their focus, their energy. But the ones who learned to settle their mind before sleep, who didn't carry unnecessary weight into the night, they woke up differently, lighter, clearer, more stable. That's the level you begin to step into. Let me show you what that looks like. You go to sleep after setting your position, peace, safety, stillness. And because your mind is no longer scattered, your rest becomes deeper, more complete, not interrupted by constant internal noise. So when you wake up, you don't feel like you're continuing yesterday. You feel reset. That's the difference. Now listen carefully. This doesn't mean every night will feel perfect. It doesn't mean you won't have thoughts, but it means those thoughts don't stay the same way. They don't build. They don't repeat endlessly because you didn't carry them in unchecked. You replace them before sleep. And that changes everything. I remember clearly this kind of pattern was difficult to disrupt, not because it was strong in a dramatic way, but because it was consistent every night, the same reset every night, the same clarity. And because of that, there was nothing building over time, no accumulation, no leftover weight. That's the key. Now, here's the truth you need to understand. You are not just improving your sleep, you are breaking a cycle of carrying things from one day into the next without ever clearing them. And once that cycle breaks, everything starts to feel different. Your mornings become clearer, your thoughts become more controlled, your reactions become more stable, because you are no longer starting your day from a place of leftover pressure. You are starting fresh. And in the next chapter, I'm going to show you what your life looks like when this becomes your default, when every night resets you, and nothing from the previous day continues to weigh you down. Now, this is where everything comes together. And it's something most people never fully experience because they never break the cycle. They carry yesterday into today and today into tomorrow without ever resetting. But when you stay consistent with what you've learned here, something begins to change. Not suddenly, but steadily, powerfully. Your nights stop being a continuation of your day and start becoming a reset. When I was in the occult, there was a clear difference between people who carried everything forward and those who cleared it daily. The ones who carried everything became heavier over time, more distracted, more reactive, more overwhelmed, because nothing was ever closed. But the ones who reset every night, they stayed stable, not because life was easier for them, but because nothing accumulated. That's the level you begin to step into. Let me show you what that looks like. You finish your day, and instead of carrying it into your sleep, you close it, you settle it, you release it. So when you wake up, you're not dealing with leftover thoughts. You're not carrying yesterday's pressure. You're not trying to fix what was never cleared. You're starting fresh. That's the difference. Now listen carefully. This doesn't mean your life becomes perfect. It means your starting point changes every single day. You're no longer beginning from a place of weight. You're beginning from clarity, and that affects everything. Your focus becomes sharper. Your decisions become clearer. Your reactions become more controlled because you are not overloaded anymore. You are reset. I remember clearly this kind of pattern was difficult to disrupt, not because nothing happened, but because nothing stayed long enough to build. That's the power of consistency. Now, here's the most important truth. This is not just about sleep anymore. It's about how you live. Because once you learn to reset daily, you stop allowing things to accumulate. You stop holding on to what doesn't need to stay. You stop carrying unnecessary weight. And that changes everything. Because now you are not living under pressure that builds over time. You are living from a place of constant renewal. And in the final chapter, I'm going to show you what your life looks like when this becomes your lifestyle. When every night clears you, every morning starts fresh, and nothing from the past continues to weigh you down. Now, this is the final level, and it's the part most people never reach, not because it's complicated, but because they never stay consistent long enough to experience it. Because what begins as a simple moment before sleep becomes a completely different way of living when you reset every night, without fail, without hesitation. You reach a point where nothing from yesterday follows you into tomorrow the same way. Not the stress, not the pressure, not the scattered thoughts. They don't carry over. They don't settle. They don't build. When I was in the occult, this was the final pattern we would recognize in certain individuals. It wasn't about what they faced, it was about what didn't stay with them. Situations would come, conversations would happen, pressure would appear, but by the time the next day started, they were clear. No build-up, no accumulation, no weight from the past. That's the level you step into when you truly close your nights. Let me show you what that looks like. You go to sleep after setting your position. Peace, safety, stillness. And because you did that consistently, your mind no longer carries unnecessary things forward. So when you wake up, you're not continuing yesterday, you're starting new. That's the shift. Now listen carefully. This doesn't mean you forget everything. It means nothing controls you anymore, because there is a difference between remembering and carrying. Most people carry everything. But when you live like this, you choose what stays, and everything else you release before it has a chance to follow you. That's real control. Because control is not about stopping life from happening, it's about deciding what continues with you. Now, here's the final truth. This was never just about reading a psalm before sleep. It was about creating a life where nothing builds up over time, where every day ends properly, where every night resets you, where every morning begins from clarity. And once you live like that, you don't feel overwhelmed the same way. You don't feel constantly pressured. You don't feel like you're always carrying something because you're not. You've learned to release it daily, consistently, intentionally, and that changes everything. So tonight, before you sleep, don't skip that moment. Don't rush past it. Pause, ride it. Set your position and let everything else go. Because what you carry into your night determines what follows you into your next day. And once you take control of that, you take control of everything that comes after.